We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey.
Dana, thank you. Thank you for joining today. I know it's a little bit of a hassle getting us going, but here we are. We're here.
We are here. Thank you so much.
So you wrote a book, and this is what I want to talk about. And it's a big buzzword, but it's really important.
Yes.
Gasping for air, the stranglehold of narcissistic abuse.
Yes. Narcissist is, yes, a word that is thrown around so loosely. It's almost humorous to me when I am just overhearing people talk and they say, oh, my boyfriend's a narcissist, or this friend of mine's a narcissist. And, I just thought, oh, but if you only knew, if you only knew. I don't want anyone to know, though, but I will say this. So I'll give my brief version of, so people understand as we proceed what I am talking about when I'm talking about narcissists.
Very good. Thank you.
I on a very, very basic level, a narcissist is somebody who has to manipulate people in situations so that they feel a level of importance that is superior to all others. They have to feel above everything, including the law and everything else. And we can get into so many aspects of that, but that's the simple version. And then I also like to always explain that all narcissists are not bad people. So when we hear this term out in the world, oh, it's a narcissist, it's usually with a negative connotation. Right. And certainly, I mean, nobody wants some kind of a stigma on them like that, but not all narcissists are bad. Some people are they just have that healthy of a self-esteem. These are the people who you'll see on social media posting pictures in a bikini or of their 6-pack of abs, and they really do look good. So like, you
can't deny it. You really look great.
Yeah. Like, I wish I looked like that too. Like, I'm starting to feel bad about myself, but these are not people that are hurting anybody with it. You might get annoyed depending who you are, but there are narcissists in my life, as anti-narcissist as I am. There are narcissists in my life that I love very much, and they have magnetic personalities, and they're amazing. They're fine. They don't bother anybody. I always say it's kind of like tumors. They're like the benign tumor in your body that it's just there. It's not bothering you though. So it's fine. But then on the other hand, you have like malignant tumors. They cause you problems. They might kill you. You need to remove them. Yeah, those are the ones that we're talking about. These are called malignant narcissists, just like malignant tumors. And, there is definitely a spectrum as to the severity of the abuse that they inflict on their victims. So it can be low end, just gaslighting, manipulation, infidelity, things like this. But it can go to the very, very far other extreme of domestic violence, all the way to murder. In fact, I forget the exact statistic, but 20-some% of the US prison population are identified as narcissistic sociopaths. And I can say my husband likes to watch 48 Hours Before Bed. It's kind of sad that I find enjoyment in that too. Nothing like a good murder mystery, but almost every one of them, he'll turn to me and he'll say, should I say it? And I'm like, no, I can see them a mile away now. They're mostly usually narcissists that are found to be the murderers. But, these are people in society that are, they're humble and they'd do anything for everybody. And they coach the, little league team and they volunteer at the church and they're so wonderful. They wouldn't do that. They would never do that to anybody, but they do. And that's the sad part.
I mean, that's what's frightening, because I was married to a narcissist, my second husband, and I didn't know the term and I didn't see it coming at all.
But they are so nice on the face with everybody else. And then behind closed doors, it's a whole nother,
Right.
it's just a whole nother world.
And that itself is a manipulation. It's a manipulative tactic because they need to make sure that, I should say when, not so much if, when you have enough strength and courage to confide in somebody about it, they want to make sure that nobody will believe you. Because that's the thing. People will ask me all the time, well, how did you not know? Or, didn't no, this man was not running down the street like Chucky with a butcher knife and disheveled hair. I mean, that's not usually what a person's attracted to. So no, I mean, even Ted Bundy, the serial killer, here's a charming, handsome man who supposedly, from documentaries I've seen, was the most amazing father to his girlfriend's little girl. He absolutely adored her, and she adored him just the same. So it's scary. I mean, when they talk about a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, it is really scary to think that on one hand, I'm actually getting chills now thinking about it, but on one hand, somebody can be the most amazing father ever, yet he's out and raping and murdering women every single day. It's terrifying, but it's that mask. They are so good at masking who they truly are.
Yeah, it was, and it's interesting. And I have a girlfriend who's going through, she's out of the relationship, but she's still healing from the narcissistic relationship. And it was really bad. And I just, when we talk about it, I just like, there's no other relationship, like unless you've experienced that relationship, it's really easy to stand on the outside and look and say, it's crazy. Why did you just get out? It is so mind bending what they do.
Yes.
It's
but that's the tricky part of it, is the mind bending is, somebody brought up the movie The Matrix to me the other day, and I thought that's exactly what it feels like, because it's like you're moving all these, you are trying to dodge bullets, because what people don't get, people think narcissistic abuse is like a specific form of abuse. It's not. It's just when a narcissist abuses you. But they use multiple, sometimes all abuses, anything. You're getting potentially physically abused, or the physical threat. You're getting verbally abused, diminished to nothing. They want to make sure to squash any sense of self-worth or self-respect you have, so you don't defend yourself or stand up to them. They financially, sexually, however legally they can abuse you. You are getting hit from so many different directions that you don't even have time to stop and think about this thing they said, or that thing they did, or this thing that just happened that your kid just witnessed, when something else is happening. I mean, it is literally coming at you so fast. They talk about this fog that you're in. I know at one point I felt like for about 10 years, as a matter of fact, when I was writing my book, the publisher, in the process of evaluating the content, was like, what about this 10-year period? You just kind of skipped over it. And I'm like, but he convinced me that I was bipolar, because of course we're all crazy. If you're with a narcissist, you're called crazy like every day. But he actually had me so convinced that I was bipolar, that I was so scared that he made it seem like there was something wrong with that, which there isn't, for the record. I don't like to make people feel badly for something they're struggling with, but he made me feel so deficient. I went to a psychiatrist thinking, oh my gosh, if I'm bipolar and I'm taking care of our son, who I think was 2 years old at the time, I need help. I mean, he had me convinced. And so I answered all the psychiatrist questions. And of course, I answered them the way that my ex had been dictating to me how I was being. So I came home with 2 prescriptions for bipolar disorder. They were mood stabilizers.
Oh my God.
And for the next, I was on them for 17 years, but for the first 10 years, it was at such a high level that, I mean, I felt like I was a zombie. That even a very close friend of mine, one day, I remember she said something to me and I didn't react like I guess I normally would or should have. And she said, you've just become so cold. And it wasn't that I was cold, but when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, nothing can make me cry. Like, somebody could drop dead in front of me I mean, nothing was affecting me. I was just stone-faced all the time. And so again, when people say, well, if it was so bad, why did you stay? I didn't know what a narcissist was either, because in typical narcissist fashion, this man took me. I grew up and was raised and went to college in the city of Chicago. He moved me 90 miles away from that to some podunk farm town. We knew nothing, nobody. Here I was on a little farm with a baby while he was off working. He had a national position, so he was only home 2 or 3 days a week for a while there too. So I'm medicated, he's gone, and I have nothing and nobody. And people don't get, like, he didn't like me being on the computer. I wasn't supposed to go on the internet. He didn't like me reading books. I wasn't supposed to be friends with the neighbor next door that moved in and had a similar age child. They make sure to confine you so
Isolate.
that they are your only influence. And then they proceed to dictate to you how things are going to be. I go through this whole thing in the book about the rules. There were some that were unspoken and some that were, he actually even twice in our life together wrote down on a piece of paper how to be a good wife. I still have this. And the sad thing is that when I pulled it out to write my book, I saw, it's actually really pathetic, but I saw that I actually checked off some of the things because I was convinced that if I could make this man happy, if I could do the things on his list, like a list of chores, if I could complete those things, maybe he'd be happy with me. Maybe then we could have some peace. Maybe then we could figure this out, because the problem with narcissists and the other part of why do we stay? Because as much as we're being bombarded with crap all the time that we're having a hard time processing and dealing with, there's a lot of good stuff too. And so we're trying to negotiate that in our heads, like the dual personalities, because on the one hand, they're saying they love you. My ex would do this thing where he'd caress my cheek as we'd watch movies or watch TV. It's a very loving, sweet thing, and flowers on Valentine's Day and my birthday. I always had a cake with a candle waiting when I walked in, from work, and he would sing happy birthday and have balloons. And there were all these loving things that he would do. So all this nastiness would make me feel like I was responsible for it. And this was the same in my childhood. This was very reminiscent of, my stepfather was abusive, and now I didn't know as a child, but now I know, boy, he was the king of all narcissists. But they want to make you feel responsible for whatever it is, that if they're angry with you, it's your fault. If something has happened, you don't even have to be present. You could have had nothing to do with it, but guess what? Somehow it will be your fault. You are the ultimate scapegoat. And so that's the problem, is that you stay because you think it's you, and they're capable of being good. So you have that hope that if you can maintain some sense of whatever it is they want, that you can always have that good, that you won't provoke this other stuff that comes out. And especially when you have a child involved, like we did. I mean, as a mother, you're just trying to, I am certainly very opinionated and, a very strong personality in my own way. But in that situation, boy, people can say to me, oh, well, I wouldn't be that weak or submissive. And I was called both of those things many times. And I thought, boy, you don't know the strength that it takes to open my eyes every day and find myself in the same darn situation and having to succumb and submit myself like that for the sake of my child. So don't tell me that I'm weak or that I'm not strong or that I need to, find strength within myself. I was finding it in and pulling out every last bit of it every damn day. So it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. And my heart hurts for those that have the domestic violence end of it, because then you have that added fear. I didn't experience that until the very end. Ironically, it was, the offense of filing for divorce was just,
The most dangerous time.
the most dangerous time. And it is very common that they do get the most dangerous when the relationship is over. But, for those that have that as part of the regular relationship before they even think about leaving, that's just, you're fearful of leaving. You can't even think of it because you're terrified. I just spoke to somebody earlier today who is in the process, legal proceedings, and he, this narcissist has threatened to kill her, their unborn baby that she is carrying, her whole family. So when you're in that situation, ask a woman like that why she's staying. Ask again. It's not that easy. It's just not that easy.
No, when I got into my second marriage, I had done a measure of healing there. I had definitely had a measure of healing. So much so that my gut was telling me not to even talk to this man. Don't even talk to him. But because of my own stuff and the part that hadn't been healed, I was drawn into him. He was handsome, he was responsible, he all of that. And so, he didn't show his true colors until after we were married. And I moved in, and I'm telling you, I could feel that something wasn't right. And I had no idea that the stuff that he was pulling was called narcissism.
Right.
But just the bizarre stuff of the lies, accusing you of wild stuff.
Yes.
Really crazy stuff. And that's the kind of stuff, like, they keep doing the mind games. And if you're with them long enough, it does wear you down.
It does.
So, I just remember looking at him and just, here's an example. This was just so bizarre. So this was after we got married, and I had moved into his home, and I wanted to contribute something to the home. So, and I was waiting for this settlement that was coming in. And I said, I'm willing to throw in $20,000. We can get new windows, whatever. We can, put it into the house. Right. I was really excited. I wanted to contribute. And then as time went on, there was a time, and it seemed like if it got quiet, that's when they would pick fights.
Yes.
Right. As soon as it was calm, they would pick, like, a 3-day weekend. Every 3-day weekend was ruined. So he was in one of those moods, whatever. And he starts accusing me, and this is months later, accusing me of asking him to borrow $20,000. And I said, what are you talking about? I would remember if I asked to borrow $20,000, right? And I thinking, there's nothing I wanted to borrow $20,000. Like, it was crazy. And he kept saying it. He was right. And I'm like, there's something about that $20,000 number, because I had forgotten what I had said. I'd forgotten. I didn't link it at first. And then it clicked. And I said, you jerk. I said, now I know where that $20,000 number comes from. It comes from when I offered to offer $20,000 to put into the house. And I busted him on it. So I was healthy enough, and I wasn't in the relationship long enough either. That's another part of it for me, that I was actually planning on getting out when he got sick, and he ended up getting sick and dying of cancer. And so as soon as we realized that, of course, I put all my plans on hold and took care of him, and I took care of him till his last breath. And I would do that again. I would never change that. That was a gift I gave him. And I think everybody deserves that gift. But I will say that I'm still working through the anger because it was after I got out of it and got clarity after I grieved that I realized what the hell I married.
Yeah.
But it made sense. I look back on my life growing up, and my mother was a narcissist, my brother, a sociopath narcissist, which you were describing earlier, which he is someone that could definitely kill someone, and actually has threatened. Oh
goodness.
So yeah. So, but there's such a variety.
There is a variety. And I mean, I don't focus too much on labels and things like that, because I mean, I always say a jerk is a jerk, abuse is abuse. If somebody intentionally harms you, I don't care what you call them or the abuse, it's wrong. The end.
Exactly.
But absolutely, there are different types. I noticed my stepfather is the king of all narcissists. He's what people think of when they think of a narcissist. He has to have the biggest house, the fanciest car, the name brand, this, the watch, just everything, but he has to make sure everybody knows it too. Like my mother would think it was funny. Like I remember the first time he's fascinated with Corvettes, and the first time he could afford to buy one, it was a Sunday morning. I mean, nobody was even awake yet. And you hear this persistent car horn outside coming down the street. We ran to the window, probably like everybody else in the neighborhood, thinking, who is this buffoon disturbing the peace on a quiet Sunday morning? It was him, because he was driving the new Corvette up the street to make sure that everybody looked out and saw what he had. And he has to this day, he has to brag to everybody about this and that and the other thing, because he needs that. Again, here we go with the praise. He needs people to say, oh my gosh, look how special you are. But the thing is, he's a POS, and I won't say those words out loud, but I mean, it's a catch-22. I have like so many things in my mind, because my childhood was awful. The physical and verbal abuse, some children have had it worse, and my heart goes out to them. The physical abuse, for me, it wasn't as severe as it probably could have been. It was bad. I didn't like it, but the verbal, I mean, to this day, there are tapes in my head, and I'm going to be 48 years old this month. Like it stays with you wherever, even when you have healed, even when you think you're okay. It sometimes resurfaces and throws you off a little bit. Even just yesterday morning, I had about an hour, and my husband, God love him, he's like, I hate seeing you hurt. And I said, you know what though? I'm just gonna go in a room. Let me just cry this out. Let me just release it and just be done with it. You know what I mean? And then I was fine. And we all have our way. But, it's hard, because people will ask me about my parents' childhood, and both my mother and stepfather. We all have stories. We've all been through stuff, and theirs were bad, but it's kind of back to the perception, how people don't take narcissistic abuse per se, or many other abuses, seriously, or even consider them forms of abuse, because for you to be abused, you have to walk around with a black eye and be withdrawn and weird, and like, you're supposed to look like the Bride of Frankenstein, I guess. I don't know. But people don't want to take it seriously. But I remember in my childhood going to my mother, because, when your stepfather abuses you, you go to the parent who's supposed to love and protect you, even though she didn't. I kept trying to appeal to her, and she would say, well, you should be more grateful, because we put this, look at this beautiful house. Look at all these things that you have. And I'm like, I don't care about, I to this day, I would have given it up. I would have been homeless and been happy if it meant having a mother who loved me and a stepfather who treated me like I was daddy's little girl and daddy's little princess. I'd give it all up in a heartbeat, because guess what? Do I have any of that? Do I have the clothes, the car, the house?
Just the repercussions from the narcissism.
It's gone. I don't care about those things, but I'm going to say this, and this came with healing, because I think, psychologically, you're hurt first. You feel pain, whether you're in the situation still or having come out of it. Then you get angry, and you're just pissed off. You're pissed at them. You're pissed at the world. You hate almost everybody that is like that. You hate the criminal justice system for not protecting you when they should have. You hate people that gave you that look, like they knew what was going on but never stepped in to do anything. You go through this anger. But then when you get past that anger part, you get to this point where you can say, well, I'll speak for myself at least, where I can say, okay, here's the thing. All of that made me who I am. And despite them telling me, you know, all these people, my mother, my stepfather, my ex-husband, the first 5 years of my life, I have been treated and told that I was nothing, nobody, worthless, insignificant, stupid, fat, everything in between. But here I am. And you know what? I'm okay. I'm not going to say that I'm broken. I'm not going to say that I'm damaged, because I'm not.
No.
Am I a product of my circumstances? Yes. But you know what the beautiful thing is? I'm okay with who I am, because I am humble. The fact that I mean, even now, you know what? I am remarried to a lovely man that I've known for many years, and I've known his family for, gosh, like 16 years. So, you know, otherwise I would have never gotten married again. I would have probably not gotten married, but we have a beautiful home, beautiful home. We live very nicely. We live very comfortably, but he knows, and I love this, that we both came from very, very poor and modest beginnings. We are all that matters to each other. None of this stuff matters. We don't care. I mean, we're not going to let like the house get foreclosed on or anything to that extent of not caring, but it doesn't matter. And
it doesn't become your identity.
Exactly. I would live in the yard in a tent with him because I love him and I know that it would be okay and we would take care of each other. That to me is a product of how I grew up. So for that type of perspective and mentality in life, I will be appreciative of my past, because all of that had to happen for me to feel how I feel.
Right.
And I'm good with it. And you know, we all have to come to our own, you know, understanding and acceptance, I guess, of what it was. And you know, I know a lot of people get stuck in that state of anger. And you know what? I did for a very, very long time, especially, you know, ironically, more with my mother than anything, because I felt like at the root of everything, she was it. That, you know, she was a teenager when she became pregnant with me. She did not want me. It has been spoken of very openly, even, you know, as early and as far back as I can remember, that I had not been wanted. She had wanted to abort me, but, you know, it wasn't very easy to do that back then, especially if you were a teenager that had no money in your family. She didn't come from a family with any money, but I was born on her 17th birthday. Irony of the universe. I was born on her 17th birthday, and immediately after my birth, she had her tubes tied so she couldn't have more children. So I'm going to venture to say, I don't think she wanted any children, not just me, but I wish that she would have either left me with my grandma and great grandma, who are the ones that insisted she keep me, and made the decision that my great grandma would take care of me. My great grandma got a job, or my grandma got a job to pay for me. Great grandma took care of me. I wish I would have just been left with them, because they loved me very much. My great grandma's no longer with us, but in my heart of hearts, she was my mother. She was the one I lived with for a while. She was the one that when I needed soothing would rock me in her chair. When I couldn't sleep, she was the one that was there making me warm milk and rubbing my, you know, petting my head and doing all these things a mother would do. When I went to live with my mother, she's just always been so detached from me. Affection was not there. Emotionally, she was always just very dismissive, like she had to tolerate me. And then she allowed the man she married to do the same. And that is the rhetoric that I heard from him, because being the narcissist, the very overt narcissist that he was, it was almost every day that I would hear. And I want people to think about this. I'm talking about, I'm 5 years old, 6 years old. That's a little kid. Think about a little kid, you know, that age, and telling them, I shouldn't have to pay for another man's child. I shouldn't have to buy you clothes. I'm not going to pay for you to have piano lessons. I'm not going to do, nobody's ever going to love you. Your mother doesn't even love you. Nobody even wanted you to be here. I shouldn't have to deal with you. I could go on and on. I'm actually in the process of, we're in the editing process for that book, which will be out next year. But, it's such I don't even, there's so many words, but
Yeah.
To set me up in life like that, I still say, as much as I hate my stepfather and I hate my ex for what they've done, I'm not actively angry at them. They are who they are. But my mother, if she had not allowed her husband to talk to me that way and to treat me that way, if she had she had the strength to stand up to him and protect her child,
Yeah.
or even just have the courtesy to let somebody that couldn't have a child or wanted one that they could love and raise, nicely, my life could have been so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the root of it. And that's what kills me, because growing up that way, of course, I went out into the world. I got it the hell out of there when I was 18, and I did whatever I had to do to just not have to go back there. And that is when I ended up with the narcissist I spent 25 years of my life with. And what a perfect storm that was.
Yep.
What a perfect storm that I was like a little dog. You want paw, you want me to roll over for that little bit of crumb of a treat you're willing to give me? Okay, wag, 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 shake the butt. I was eager to please anybody that would give me the slightest dose of affection or attention.
Yep.
And this man wanted servitude, and he felt entitled, so I gave it to him. I was his biggest cheerleader. I was resourceful. You want this, let's do that. And in between all that, and very early on, I should say, absolutely, he had angry outbursts. I saw the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. It was all unsettling, but I still tried so hard, because I never, even in my adult life, could get my parents to see me. They just refused to acknowledge any achievement or success or even my potential. They almost actually diffused any opportunity that I had, to succeed in anything, because I wasn't supposed to, because I had to be nothing for them to be right. And so I had to make this marriage work, and I had to make my husband happy, and I had to, I mean, I was a little bit of an overachiever, and I tried very, very hard, but at the point where I got very ill towards the end of that 25-year relationship, this was even before I filed for divorce. But the big reason that I did is because, having to hold everything in, not having anyone, I didn't have a mother to turn to. I didn't have a sister to turn to, or, I had no friends anymore. Who was I going to talk to? I had a very good relationship with my ex's family, but what am I going to call his mother or his sister and say, oh, this is what's going on?
He would deny it, and they would believe him.
And who are they going to, and you know what? Devil's advocate, but isn't that what your family's supposed to? They're supposed to be on your side. But at the same time, it was very hard for me, but keeping everything in all those years and having to basically live not just in misery, but in circumstances that just defied everything that I was and everything that I felt and thought and believed, had made me sick physically. After a year of testing, because I had about 24 random symptoms that nobody could piece together. The heart doctor wanted to give me a pill to help this, and the gastroenterologist tried to give me a pill for that, and the optometrist said, go get a brain scan, and there was neurological stuff, and oh, we need to test you for MS because we think you have. I mean, nobody knew what the hell was going on.
It's called trauma.
It's called trauma, because they were talking about lymphoma.
Oh yeah.
Tumors,
fibromyalgia.
So it turns out, after a year of this, I actually got with a functional medicine doctor. These are doctors that look at your whole body as a system, not just one particular aspect. And they put it was fascinating and sad all at the same time. I just remember the doctor saying, "You've been living in fear for so long. Like, you're just terrified." And I'm like, yeah, honestly, when I thought about it, I'm like, you're right. I am afraid of people because people hurt in my experience.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to leave my house because if I go to the Dollar General for cat food and it takes too long, I'm going to be accused of cheating or God knows what else. I'm afraid to even go to work sometimes because then he accuses me not of working, but apparently I'm having homosexual relationships with my female coworkers instead of actually, I mean, like I couldn't even go to church
Bizarre.
because I'm screwing the 80-year-old priest. Like, yeah, I'm living in a little fear and I have a kid that I'm trying to put on the smile and pretend like everything's just fine. And it's so not. And so the functional medicine doctor ran all these tests. They ended up sending 19 vials of my blood to Mayo Clinic. At this point, I had dropped 20 pounds in 2 weeks, for no reason. I was skeletal. I was starting to get very, very scared because I remember one morning I went to the bathroom and I couldn't tear the toilet paper off the roll. I couldn't even get my hands to grasp toilet paper enough to tear it off. And I just remember sitting there and I just started crying because I thought, is this how it's going to be? Because God forbid if I'm that sick and left for this man, one, he's going to go and get pity from everybody that look at me, poor me with my sick wife, boo-hoo, and probably accept handouts of food and money and donations of God knows what and go blow it all on booze and cigarettes and whatever, other things that he wanted. Or I was good as dead because to rely on him, I mean, even if I was sick, that was, I wasn't allowed to be sick. That was an ordeal. So Mayo Clinic, they run a cortisol test. I get a call saying we have to rerun the cortisol test because we think we compromised the labs. There's no way the results are this high. Okay, no problem. Do the test over again. And for anybody that's done a cortisol test, it's basically just swabbing your mouth. They want samples of your saliva at 5 different specific times throughout the day. So you're even waking up in the middle of the night. This is pertinent information. You're even waking up in the middle of the night to take a sample because they want to test your levels throughout the day to kind of see averages and where they're at. So after that second test, we got the results. My levels at any given time, including while I was sleeping or trying to sleep, were 4 times higher than what they should have been at their very highest. They said the very highest levels you should ever feel are around 600 to 700, but they said mine were consistently over 2,500 at all times of the day, including when I was sleeping. And of course they were, because I was always very hyper vigilant and I was sleeping with one eye open and I was sleeping in our basement because I didn't even trust this man enough to sleep in our, bed next to him, because things had happened there, multiple things that I slept in the basement. I even put a 2x4 under the knob because I thought that if he tried to come down after me for something, at least I'd have that warning because I was so afraid to even sleep and not be able to come back to consciousness and awareness before he would do something to me. So of course my levels were that high, and of course they were high 24/7, but they said it had been running through me, this high level of cortisol, for so long that my white blood cells, those are the ones that get rid of viruses and protect your immunity, they thought it had to eradicate something, but it was the cortisol that it had to eradicate. So they basically started killing themselves off. So all these other symptoms I was having were all autoimmune symptoms, autoimmune reactions. And on top of that, just for the cherry on top of that sundae, you hear the scratchiness in my voice. That is upper airway resistance syndrome, which the doctor says is like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at once. And guess what? It's rare, but it sure is common among victims of abuse. Learned that one the hard way.
Interesting.
It is interesting, and not too many people know about it. So that's part of my mission. That's part of why I wrote the book, because I have heard stress can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
I will live with this the rest of my life. So for people that say, oh, let go of the past, like the past is holding on to me, and people don't understand, as
Mm-hmm.
you said, yes, holding your body is holding that trauma inside of you. I mean, God love my husband now, but he and his son, that he has a son that lives with us. I mean, they have been so kind and so sweet and patient with me as I have been healing, because my nervous system and my mind are not completely in sync.
Nope.
Yes, I am fully aware that I am safe now. I am fully aware that neither one of them would let anybody touch one little hair on my head. But my history has predicated that I have got to always have my eyes open, and I have to walk into a room and assess the situation. I have to determine if there's any potential threats. And oh my gosh, my husband has a big family. Honestly, I try to avoid anything with them because there's so many of them. And I mean, I can't even speak just thinking about walking into like a holiday with them. I sweat profusely because I'm watching that one's hand gestures. I'm looking at the eye movement on that one. I'm getting the energy and the vibe off of that one, and that one, it's just, I feel like I'm getting hit with way too much information, but my mind has to, people tell me settle down, or really, I can't, because for 45 years, if I didn't keep my eyes open, I mean, when my ex swung a crowbar at my head, if I wasn't paying attention and reacting fast, I would not be standing here right now talking. And that was just one of the many instances, not to mention stuff that happened in my childhood. So yes, I can't just forget that. I will be 48. I'm only 3 years out of my, marriage to my ex, but it stays with you. It stays with you. And people don't realize too that narcissists don't just go away. People were very critical of me when, my current husband and I got together, saying, oh, the ink's not even dry. Well, the thing is that I wish the marriage and the relationship and everything ended on the day we signed the papers. But it didn't. It'll never end. It actually got worse after that. And he still, every once in a while, finds a way to put that hook out there to see if he's still got some attachment, even though he has moved on. It would be interesting if she knew some of the messages and emails that I have gotten, which I don't respond to because I'm not going to interact with him. I'm not going to tolerate it. That is something about, like we talked before, about setting boundaries. You have to set the boundary. And with a narcissist, it's just, you have to go no contact. It doesn't matter what they say. But honestly, it doesn't matter what you would say. Even if you go back at them and say, don't contact me again, you're this and that. They don't care.
They want you to react.
They want you to react because then they know they can still affect you. And the thing is, you can't let them know that.
You can't let them know that. And the thing that you and I have in common, and I think the audience should understand too, is our abuse was our entire childhood.
Yes.
It was all I knew. I mean, I don't know not having that childhood abuse. And of course, as I got older and into my teen years is when it got even worse. But so our foundation was never set right.
Right.
And my abuse was my mom, my dad, and my brother. So my family.
You had it everywhere.
I had it everywhere. And, and then of course, back then it wasn't talked about. It certainly wasn't talked about. Right. And there wasn't the protection for children that there is now. Thank God.
Exactly.
There was none, and my biggest protector, my dad, didn't protect. As a matter of fact, he went and ran and hid. So our very foundation was never, how would you say, normal, for lack of a better word. we had this going on in our life. And so it makes sense too that both of us ended up in narcissistic marriages.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly the reason I am putting this book out about my childhood, because there were so many questions that have come up either, in whatever interviews, podcasts, and just in social situations of, but you're educated and you're
Yeah.
smart and you're not that person. Like, how could you end up in that? Why did you become that submissive person? And I had to actually think about it, and it forced me to evaluate how I grew up. But I do realize, yeah, I don't have the verbiage or even the ability to understand, when we're going through it, what we're
Right.
going through. But absolutely, it's a wonder I didn't honestly, commit suicide, because I remember so many times as a child, somewhere between like 12 and 18, so many times just curling up in fetal position in my bedroom and crying and like, why am I here? Why am I even existing? If nobody wants me here, if this is what life is, why?
I want out. I know. I thought the same thing. Well, first of all, I thought it was a mistake.
Yes, I was told I was a mistake.
Well, you were told, yeah. And
and I was, but like to think it's a nice mistake.
my parents had me later in life. They were back then. So, and I remember thinking, and then just the way I got treated, I just thought, guy, I was a mistake there. Like you said, your mom resented you. That's how I felt. Like,
Yeah.
I came along, I was a mistake, and now I'm interfering in their life. And,
Yes.
so I felt like a mistake. So I carried that for years.
Yeah. And I did too. And what made mine worse was that when I was in the 3rd grade, my stepfather, he just always found ways of making me feel so deficient as a human being. He decided that because my biology wasn't right, because I wasn't his biological child, he wanted my mother to have his biological child. And here's a woman that didn't even want children, never mind me. And here I was. And he wants his own child because I'm not good enough. I was never good enough. I'm still not good enough. So she went through, I'm trying to think, it doesn't even matter. It was probably 8 years or so. I want to say maybe 7 years of going through these procedures to reverse the tubal ligation, because apparently, I guess it's like a tattoo. You can get your tattoos removed. Now you can get your tubes untied and be able to have babies. Well, she underwent several miscarriages before she carried a baby to full term. But when I was just before I turned 14, she had their biological baby. And my stepfather actually said this man has, talk about boundaries. He has none, like none whatsoever. He told me to my face, I am a 13-year-old child. And he says to me, when this baby is born, we are going to be a family, me, your mother, and the baby, but you are not part of this family. He just completely, I felt like I was being replaced. And I'm actually really proud of myself, because I can honestly say I never resented my brother. It turned out to be a boy. I never resented or blamed my brother or held any ill feelings towards him, because he was a baby. It wasn't his fault. He was born into this, stupidity,
Yeah.
But I still had, how could I not feel replaced? I'm not good enough. So you had to create a whole other human being.
Yeah. Knowing the whole history of your mom went through a lot.
She did. And that's the thing, is that's why I think I felt softer towards her earlier on. And then I got angry because I want to be sympathetic to what she was going through. Now that, I have had miscarriages, and I do have a 20-year-old son that I love very much. So I get it. Like, now that I can look back, I can't even imagine how hard that was for her and what she was getting from her husband.
Yeah.
But here we go again. It's the why do we stay? And the problem is that when my mother and I finally did part ways, for good, a handful of years ago, it was her choice. I actually begged her, actually got down on my hands and knees and was crying and begging her literally I knew our relationship would never be as close as I would have liked to have with my mother. Or like any daughter wants with their mother. But I said, whatever relationship I just want a mother. That's all I want. And she said that she could not be my mother and his wife.
That's probably true.
And it is true because of him.
Exactly. Because he will make her miserable.
Yes. And he did. And I had seen it on occasion, on the very rare occasion that she had any affinity towards me. But it was still her choice.
Yep. 100%.
And she told me that she couldn't have, like I said before, the car and the house and the stuff. She couldn't have her life if she wasn't with him. And she said, you're just going to go live your life anyway and go move on. And what am I going to have? I said, I don't know, a daughter? A relationship with your daughter, like you're willing to like give me up. I'm the price or the sacrifice I should say for stuff. I mean, that's a tough one, but what I also learned, the lesson I learned there, which helped me in my healing, is that, I mean, of course we all I'm going to be, like I said, 48. Of course I still want my mommy. I'm like a 5-year-old little girl inside. I'm going to cry right now just thinking about how much I wish I had a mother, but you cannot force somebody to be something that they don't want to be. She wants to be my brother's mother. And that's the irony of it all. And the biggest slap in the face is that if my brother was standing here right now, he would tell you a story of the most amazing parents that ever were. They should be on parenting podcasts for how they have raised him, because they chose to support and encourage and love and uplift him in all the ways they chose not to with me, because I was not allowed to be anything. I had to be exactly what they wanted me to be for them to feel better about how they treated me. I had to be that difficult loser kid who had mental problems, which they still run around telling people, which I think is funny because, one, nobody should be made to feel ashamed for any mental struggles they have, because usually they're induced by somebody or something that happened
right
to them. It's not like we want this stuff. And they're the perpetrators. And so it just doesn't make sense to me. But again, I have to just go with the fact that my brother, thank God, had 2 wonderful parents, and he still does. And unfortunately, because in his head, just like we with our narcissists we have a hard time deciphering between the 2 personalities. My brother can't comprehend that they would ever be the people that I have claimed them to be to me. So, do we have a relationship? We used to. But I have to grieve it. Thank you. And that's the worst part, because it's like I'm healing, and I think we always will be healing. I don't think there's ever an end to it. You just get a little bit better, and you have some, steps back once in a while. I call them moments. We all have our moments. But then we're okay, and we go ahead and hopefully we're learning about ourselves and about others, and just moving forward with that knowledge so that we can be at peace with our past. So it's very unfortunate that part of that process, oftentimes when you're setting these boundaries and living and standing firmly in your truth, you are also having to grieve people that have not died, but that the relationship has died in your life with them, and it is no longer. So, I just always like to be very clear with people that, there's never a good time to heal. You have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
but I'm never going to tell people that it's this magical thing that they think. You're not going to be sleeping and your fairy godmother isn't going to sprinkle magical dust and wave a wand and you're going to wake up and the sun's going to be shining and you're going to be skipping in sunshine and rainbows and just like, oh, everything's just better now. No.
It's a process.
And it gets really, really ugly before it gets better.
Does. It's like spring cleaning. I call it like spring cleaning. You know, it gets really messy and then it does eventually get better. Yeah.
It does. And that's actually a really good way to look at it because it's like, you know, it is. I'm just thinking about cleaning. Like there's always that like cabinet or that drawer that like you use it every day and you throw stuff in and take stuff out and it's fine. But then when you take everything out and you really see like the grody-ness in there and you're like, ooh, magic eraser, Mr. Clean, I need a toothbrush. Like, and then you're nasty. Like you look at your hands when you're done. Yeah. That's what it feels like to go through it, except you're carrying that nastiness kind of with you for a while until you figure out how to clean it off of you and to deal with it. And, you know, I think anybody that's been through any kind of trauma too, you know, people talk about triggers just as loosely as they talk about narcissists all the time too. But, you know, the PTSD is a very real thing. And the key to that is not avoidance. I mean, I absolutely isolated myself thinking I'll just avoid everybody and everything. But guess what? People will still find a way. It could be in a text message. It could be in social media that you respond to something and somebody responds to you and it sets you off on some feeling that somebody made you feel before. It could be in I mean, you know, your cat can look at you the wrong way. I don't know, but you know, there's always something. Exactly. There's always something. So, you know, the key to that is just learning to self-regulate and there's no magical way to do that except to actually interact with people to practice self-regulation. We can read about how to do that. We can see videos on YouTube or listen to podcasts like this. And, you know, some people will go to some sort of therapy and there's so many therapies offered now that if you can afford them, you know, do the one that suits you best. But whatever it is, you cannot heal just by knowing what the tools are to self-regulate and to feel better. You have to actually interact, I found out, with other people.
You have to practice.
So that you are triggered so that you can actually pull that tool out of the toolbox and say, okay, well, let's give this a go. And it's not going to be pretty the first time. You're going to struggle. You know, things happen, but with enough practice, you get it to where you can manage yourself. You know, can I go into situations and be around people that before I might have shaken and, you know, gone into a panic attack? Yes. Do I want to? No. Do I have enough self-respect to know, you know, or to choose, you know, whether I want to or not? Absolutely. I have not become necessarily a snob, but I am choosy about who I surround myself with.
That's a very good point.
I have spent 40 some years with people who told me that I can't, I never, I won't, you know, no. Well, how am I supposed to grow in soil like that? You know, it's amazing that just 3 years out of 45 years of abuse, I am with my husband. I just have to love on him. He is always smiling and he looks at everything so brightly. Even when I've witnessed people walk all over him and treat him like crap, he's
Sounds
just
like
one
my
of those
husband.
people. Yeah, he just you know, he's so I wish I was as forgiving as he was and just so willing to see the nice side of things. But I love the benefit of that because I've been now around somebody for not even that long of a time that speaks all this positivity into me. You know, he doesn't ever tell me I can't, I won't, or don't, or any of that. He speaks to me like I already am doing and being the things that I want to be. And I love it, you know, like when I'm going to get on a podcast, okay, go save somebody. Yes. Thank you. I know it's very sweet. And like, I always, it's so interesting because my ex never complimented me except on my appearance.
Yeah.
You'd always, hey, beautiful. Hi, you're so beautiful. I mean, we all want that. And it almost annoyed me that my husband now, like I'll get all dolled up for us to go out and I'm like sitting there waiting, like, dude, you can tell me I look nice or something. But he does it, but it's in the everyday stuff. It's when I'm all messy and grody and maybe I haven't even showered because I was up all day and all night, like trying to do some revisions on a book. And it's just, I got my ride on and everything's going good. And he'll be like, look at you being a little writer, going and helping people. And
Aw.
I love that because then it puts me in a good mindset, a positive mind space. And it's a compliment to who I am inside, because it's kind of like we talked about all the stuff that doesn't mean anything. The exterior stuff, I'm not going to look like this when I'm 90. I don't look like I
Yeah.
did when I was 20. I mean,
Right.
it
Right.
goes, I could get in an accident tomorrow and it all goes away. But this man loves me for what I do and who I am and for real qualities. And these are things we should look for, notice things like that in relationships, because the people that are using you, they don't want to spend time with you, going out for a glass of wine or to dinner, or they don't care if you're talking to them, but they're not asking you about your kid or how's this or that, so when you go to set that boundary and you say no to them the first time and they're just like, well, the heck with you then, and they move on, their reaction will be very telling. So it is interesting. I always, I guess being a word girl, that's one of my nicknames. Being a writer, I'm a word girl, but I do pay attention to the words people use. And
Yes.
even introducing, like I noticed my former father-in-law, who is not with us anymore, but I adored that man and he adored me just the same. He always introduced me to people as his daughter, not his daughter-in-law, as his daughter, which was confusing when they knew his son and we were married, but it was our little joke. But that's how much he loved me. But then, like, I noticed once with my current husband, one of his sisters introduced me to a friend once as, oh, this is my brother's wife. And I thought, ooh, ouch. The dissociation there. Noted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do have to pay attention. And I think it's helpful and goes back to, you can't force people to be what they don't want to be.
No. No, you brought something up when you were talking about your brother and your brother was treated completely different than you. And I want the audience to know this is not uncommon.
No, it's not.
It is not uncommon when there's more than one sibling that maybe one or maybe two will get picked out to be abused and the others are not. And a lot of times, of course, this creates a lot of division in a family, because you can imagine, right? Because the one kids are like, no, my life was great. Nothing ever happened to me. I never saw anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And you were severely abused.
Oh, absolutely.
And they didn't see it.
Or they do, because what's interesting, I don't know if you ever read the book, A Child Called It. It was out in the early 90s, I want to say. And I recently reread it for the second time. But if anyone's interested, it's called A Child Called It. It is actually a true story of one of the most horrific cases of child abuse in the state of California. And the interesting thing was that the child who it's the person who wrote the book, I'm getting chills. He was the only one abused out of 5 children. The other children saw it, witnessed it, almost, I don't want to say they were participant, but they would witness it to the extent that they actually started, verbally, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, they were very aware. Let's just leave it that way. They were aware, and they were, sort of carrying on the same narrative that the mother who was imposing this abuse on this one child out of 5, and they were calling him names, and they were, talk about dissociation at school. The siblings were, just staying away from him and acting like he was like, this freak of nature. And it just carried into those relationships. But the father, who was not abusive at all and was completely 100% aware of what was going on for all those years that it went on, looked the other way. Look the other way. even at certain points told the abused child, like, there was one point I remember in the book where the kid is basically pleading with his dad, like,
Mm-hmm.
please don't make me go in there with her, because you and I both know what's going to happen and it's not going to be good. And the dad was just like, well, just, how she is, and I love you, but, see you later.
I don't want to suffer.
kind
I
of a
want you to
thing.
suffer.
Pretty much, but it's devastating. It was so bad that there was actually one chapter that I think it took me 6 times trying to read it before I could get through that chapter, because it was just not, but again, it was so horrific. But I think that's the part that's so shocking, because a little, I don't want to say a little abuse, like you just sprinkle salt and pepper on something, but it's one thing to single out a child, but the severity of what this child went through, and that none of the others, the 4 others, were just exempt from it. And this child was not, as far as he knew or revealed in the book, was not an accident like I was, or a mistake like
Right.
you were called, or anything like that. He was actually in the middle of the ordering. Just the one that the mother decided was the chosen one. And it's just so sad that he went through, like, even going to school, that all the people that noticed, even teachers, and he couldn't get help at all. He couldn't get any help. It's so sad. But if anybody's, I was gonna say, if anyone's up for a good read, but A Child Called It, I feel so terrible that I can't remember his name, but it's very easily found on Amazon or anywhere else. It's back in the 90s it came out, but it's still available. So that is the thing, that it does happen. And in my case, yes, my brother had no idea. He did witness one of the worst incidences of abuse that I endured, but he was only maybe 1.5 or 2 years old. So he has no actual memory of it. He was there though, and I'll actually never forget it. And it will be in my next book about that, I was straddled in the hallway, being slapped and beaten and held down and strangled. And he was jumping up and down on our parents' bed, having fun, being a little kid.
Right.
But the joyous look on his face, and his eyes were wide and happy, and his little dimples were showing, and he was looking down on me. And I mean, we made eye contact, and he has no memory and he has no idea. And further, my stepfather threatened me, after that if I ever told my brother anything about what I went through, and I'm like, what are you going to do? Because I got a little snarky at the point where I was a teenager, because I didn't care anymore. Like, what more could he do to make me suffer? And he never did finish the sentence, but he did take out a life insurance policy on me, and it wasn't nice, but I'm here and we have no contact, and it's fine. I'm just sad that my brother and I, he got married last year. I was at his wedding, but there's really no relationship there. He has parents that he's offended that and believe me, I'm respectful. I don't like just go around saying your parents are this or that or anything, but we try to keep our parents out of it. But unfortunately, with narcissists, even though I have not had any contact with my mother and stepfather, they're just so persistent, in finding ways to say things about me, finding ways to hurt me. Third party rumors get started, because of things. So I just don't understand. But it's like I say about my ex, who's a narcissist. It's like they're cockroaches. They come out in the dark, and you just cannot get rid of them. They just keep coming. They just keep coming.
So what did you do? So you and your ex separated. So what did you do to help your healing? Because, and I'm going to say to the audience, it takes a while to overcome this narcissistic relationship. This is not something, it has lasting effects, because I mean, Dennis has been gone almost for what, 10 years, and it still comes
Okay.
up. It still
Oh,
comes up.
absolutely. Well, I think people don't realize that. I think people think it's just mental health, but people don't realize that actual trauma, which narcissistic abuse is considered a trauma, it actually
Definitely.
does affect your brain.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
Your brain physically changes, your brain chemically changes.
Mhm.
So this isn't something that's just like, oh, I just need to have some positive self-talk and I'll be okay. I mean, yes, it helps, and I'm not minimizing self-talk. It's huge. But people
No.
don't get that. This is, you cannot see it, but I mean, there are actually images you can pull up online that show, I even remember I posted one on social media years ago of a showing a normal, healthy 3-year-old brain next to the scan of an abused 3-year-old child brain. And I mean, oh my gosh, it looked like somebody took a piece of paper and crumbled it and got ready to throw it in the garbage. But again, here we go. People can't see it. So they
Yeah.
don't think it's, they don't understand that
It's not in front of their
there.
face. Yeah.
Right.
And
And we're putting on makeup and we're doing our hair because we want to feel good about ourselves, which is
right.
part of self-care. So there's no bruises. We're not walking
Mm-mm.
around like all sullen and withdrawn and weird. I mean, well, I do sometimes, but it's okay. It's just part of my charm. But that's that's just part of the whole. This is part of what we're dealing with. It's not, just like this lung syndrome that I have, it was caused by abuse, but it's something I have to deal with. So if I get in a situation where I'm really tense and stressed and overwhelmed, my oxygen will drop. I mean, my COVID level oxygen saturation is 93% or lower. I've been down to 83%,
Ooh.
all on my own, just from stress. So,
Wow.
people don't realize, and I always used to joke with my doctors when they said chronic stress, relating to the cortisol. And I'm like, yeah, is that what we're calling it? Because it was straight up abuse and trauma and awfulness, for years and years. But whatever you want to call it, it absolutely does change so many things about you. So it's really important that people understand that, and understand that, yes, while they're trying to heal, which usually is surrounded around that mental health aspect,
Mhm.
there is all that physical stuff
Mhm.
still going on. So while you're dealing with the mental aspect and trying to work through things and process and accept, which is a big part of it, you also have to, like for me, even with my writing, going back to those places that I have resolved and understood and accepted, it's still bringing it up as if I'm reliving it all
Right.
together. So I'm getting headaches and I'm getting migraines and I'm getting stomach aches, and sometimes I get nauseous and I have to
Mhm.
go, sit in the bathroom for a while and let it just, take deep breaths and all that. So
Mhm.
it's not something that's ever going to go away. Even if you are healing or healed, mostly better, you're gonna feel effects of it when it resurfaces, and it always will.
Mhm. Oh,
But
yeah.
there are a lot of ways you can resolve some of it. Self-care, there's a lot of things that people can do. I know for me, I didn't have the ability, certainly in the situation, I couldn't even go like to the grocery store without being questioned. So, I mean, trying to go to an appointment to talk to a therapist was out of the question
Yeah.
completely, never mind spending the money. But once he was out of the house and I could breathe, literally, that was the first thing I did. I think people laugh when they see that, you go to find out how to heal, how to, meditate, and just all these things that are supposed to bring your soul a sense of peace start with breathing, but really
Mhm.
take some deep breaths.
Mhm.
And if you
Yep.
have to stop during the day and do that, just take deep breaths. If you're
Mhm.
in a situation, something triggers you, you see somebody, whatever, you get a message, deep breaths.
Mm-hmm.
Just breathe.
Yes.
Beyond
You
that,
don't want to do it at the moment, but I promise
well,
you,
it
it,
just
it,
sounds too simple.
it
And so
does.
people don't believe it. They think it's one of those things that's said to appease you, like, oh, just take a few deep breaths. No,
Mm-hmm.
you really need to breathe. You really need to take deep breaths. Beyond that, what worked for me and what I like to advise people is just start with you, because usually you have been told who you are. Your life has been dictated to you, what you could do, what you could wear, what you could read, what you could whatever. You need to rediscover who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and really open yourself to who you are, because usually who you are has been subdued and minimized and pushed down so you could be who they want you to be. So you could please them, not you. So little things, for me, it was, I thought, okay, this is silly. Even if I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to put some makeup on, because then when I feel nicer, I feel, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
looking in the mirror and seeing like, oh, look at those dark circles and my frizzy hair and everything else. Made me feel good. I painted my nails. I love red. So I painted my nails red. Then I did my toenails. I wanted a pint of ice cream for dinner instead of cooking a dinner. I gave myself permission to not
Mm-hmm.
cook dinner and just have that pint of butter pecan ice cream. Again, I know these sound silly, but I call it like, it's sort of like depositing little bits of joy into your happy jar. Because those little things, when I look at my nails and, I just get those peel on nails now, or those stickers or whatever, but you know what? They look cute. I've got
Mm-hmm.
reindeer coming for Christmas and, but I look down and it brings me that little millisecond that I glance at my fingers, it makes me happy. And don't I
Mm-hmm.
deserve that? Yes. And again, these sound like dumb things. If you're a guy, go shoot some hoops outside, have a beer with your friends, whatever. It's okay to go have, invite a couple girlfriends over, have a glass of wine, bake yourself a cake, whatever it is. Just, sing to your music, dance your
Dance.
dances. Exactly. While I cook, I sometimes bop around
Me
and
too.
whatever. Yeah, it's great because you're just being you, and that's perfectly okay. And to have those little moments of joy, that's going to make you rediscover who you are. That's going to make you feel like you're being authentic to who you are, which if you are living an authentic life, you are going to be filled with such a sense of peace. And there is no better confidence than knowing that you are living true to who you are
Mm-hmm.
and true to who you're supposed to be and who you want to be, more importantly,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no anxiety in that. There's more anxiety in trying to be what other people want you to be or what they
Yes.
expect you to be, and worrying about if they like you. Because guess what? People are going to like you and people aren't going to like you. And that's what makes the world go round.
Right.
And unfortunately, some of the people that don't want to like you, are going to be your family. They're going to be your mothers. They're going to be your fathers and your brothers and your whoever's. And it
Mm-hmm.
sucks. It absolutely sucks. I'm with you. Feel the pain, preaching to the choir. But if you focus on all of that and all of those people who are you are never going to do anything to be good enough. You are
No.
never going to be able to say anything or show them anything to
Nope.
convince them that you are worthy. So stop, because if
Mm-hmm.
you stop focusing on them and look around, there's going to be in the shadows there some people that have been there all along, or maybe even
Mm-hmm.
some new people that you didn't even know were there, but they have been watching and they have been loving
Mm-hmm.
you and they have been caring about you and they have been cheering you on and rooting for you. But you are so focused on these other people who don't want to be a part of you. So turn around, take a look, see what's
Mm-hmm.
there, because boy, for somebody, and I'm going to say, even probably I'd say 2-3 years ago, yeah, about that time frame, I'll never forget. I had a moment. It was one of those moments, and I mean, I've had several of them in my life, but it was a very dark time, having lost my mother completely. My stepfather, I wasn't too worried about losing, but, failed marriage. My son obviously was teetering between two, but, there was so much going on. And in any divorce, You lose mutual friends because
Oh, yeah.
people tend to decide whether you want them to or not. Family, I was exiled from this family because I claimed the abuse, and then I was exiled from that family because I felt like everything I'd ever known and everyone I'd ever, like, everything crumbled around me. And I'm like, to say I felt alone in this world, I felt orphaned, I felt abandoned, I felt so many awful things. And I just remember crumbling in the shower, and I was fully clothed. I didn't even get to turn the water on, but I just crumbled in the corner, and I sobbed my eyes out. And even just hearing the sound of, I mean, it was such guttural pain that it was awful. It was awful. But I look back at that and think, thank God I stood up and wiped my tears and made it through another day. Because I look at for somebody that felt like they were so alone now, just a short time later, I'm like, my head is spinning. I feel guilty. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's asking why I haven't called them, and that one wants to meet with me, and I don't have time to have lunch with everybody, and I don't have time to call everybody, and now I have too many people, and I love that though, and I wish that I could have gone back and told that girl that was sobbing in the shower, like, it's okay, you're just focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on things that are never going to be instead of things that can be if you notice them enough to pay attention and grow and nourish that. So, I know that so many people in this realm, I hear it all the time. I'm alone. I don't have anybody. I've said all the same stuff, but I am telling you, even people that really think they don't, you have me, you have, I'm sure you, Lisa, can say there are so many people. Nobody wants to see anybody fail like that. At least we don't. So, taking care of you and just, like I said, the big part of that, deposit happy little things into your life. Be who you are. Don't settle for less than who you are, and surround yourself with the people that accept you for you. And am I perfect? Do I always say the right thing or do the right thing? No. And my people aren't yes people. They're going to say, oh, I love you, but you know what? Maybe don't say that again. Or, you're better than that. You don't need to be doing that. But they love me no matter what I do. I can screw up and it's okay. I can do something they don't agree with, and it's okay. And even in my marriage, I'm going to say this too, that coming out of trauma, and I know you have the same experience as well. Most people want to just swear off relationships altogether. And I'm one of them. I'm going to be alone. And it's funny because, again, I knew my husband's family for many, many years, and I absolutely adored his father and would hang out with his father. 80-some-year-old people have a lot of wisdom to share.
Yes.
So if you sit and talk to them, they'll tell you, and I remember him saying, oh, please, you're 45. You are not going to be alone for another 45 years. You can't do it. And I'm like, yes, I can. And then, a year later, I'm engaged to your son.
See, I told you.
Yeah, he did say that, actually.
I'm sure he did.
He did. But, what a beautiful thing that my husband has taught me. This just happened a couple months ago, but I was having a day where I was just crabby. I was just awful. Like I said to him, he came to give me a hug, good morning. And I'm like, oh my God, stay away from me. I don't even like myself today. And he's like, yeah, sometimes I don't like you much either, but I always love you. And it sounds funny, but for somebody, like, when you've grown up like you and I have grown up, and in the marriages that we had, oh my gosh, sometimes I would be perfectly fine, not doing anything, not saying anything. And it was, what's that look? Everything you do is wrong, or you didn't cook this meat good enough, or the two sides, that you made with dinner are both carbohydrates. I told you it was just like nothing could ever be right. So it's like you feared, disapproval, or you
Mm-hmm.
feared anything that could be perceived as not, well, I guess not good enough. There's no other way to
Mm-hmm.
say it. So for my husband to say something like that, I didn't understand that. It took me, it kind of threw me off. Like I was kind of stunted into silence. Like, wait, what did you just say? Because, in my previous marriage, I would have been, oh my gosh. He used the silent treatment sometimes for
Yeah.
weeks, just like
Yep.
my stepfather. My mother and stepfather could go a month and not even look at me when I was in the room. And what a cruel thing to do to a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So for my husband now to be like, yeah, there's times I don't like you, but I always love you. And he doesn't treat me differently during my not so good times
Yes.
versus my perfectly fine times.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that's the one thing that has always gotten to me, is when I'm basically shamed for feeling
Yes.
anything or having emotions or
Mm-hmm.
reacting, I guess, negatively to something, because I had been taught for so many years, like I was afraid to show emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid to have, because it was frowned upon, and
Mm-hmm.
I would be hit. I don't know why
Oh,
they
yeah.
thought that abuse would, make me stop crying,
I know.
or whatever. It doesn't make any sense, but it was very significant to me for my husband to say that I don't always like you, but I always love you. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, is that what it means to have a healthy relationship? But my point in all this is that there are people out there who will love you no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who think that we are broken and that we are damaged and that, oh, they can't have a healthy relationship. I don't listen to that. I listen to myself now, and I
Mm-hmm.
encourage everybody to do the same, because you are who you decide you want to be at the end of the day. You can
Mm-hmm.
choose, like my mother did, to be the wife to a man that can put her in a fancy house and have fancy things, and good for them, and I hope they're happy. Or you can choose to, be true to who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't matter what you have, you're just looking for connections and humanity in people. And part of humanity is being imperfect and struggling once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just part of it. But there's
Mm-hmm.
good in that too. There's more good in that than there is negative.
Your husband is such a wise man. And one of the things that I often say is we can love each other. We don't always love what someone does, right?
Yes.
And I use our kids as a great example. We always
Oh,
love them,
yeah.
always, no matter what.
That's a
But we
good
don't always
point.
love what they do. But you
Yeah.
separate who they are. You don't like what they do, and you correct it, but you do it in love.
Right. But that's exactly right. I never thought of it that way, but you're not. And one of the things I always say, which goes along with that, is you're not defined by I'm not my trauma. I'm not my
Right.
abusive past. I'm just me. I'm
Correct.
just trying to be me. And that's who I am, whatever that is. But yeah, we shouldn't be defined by some action or something we said, because that's just the tiniest bit of who we are. And we could get into the deep psychological discussion of why somebody said this or did that,
Right.
and explain it, but it's so complex that how can you define people to that one moment? Because hopefully, and I
Yeah.
imagine listeners to a podcast like this are people like us that continually want to learn to be better humans and
Mm-hmm.
want to learn how to be better, mentally. Mental health, I think, there's so much stigma in the term, but people don't realize it's like when you say the word diet. Diet is what you eat. Diet does not mean you're eating salads. It
Right.
doesn't mean you're going on a diet. Diet is what you eat. Mental health is just trying to keep your mind healthy, trying
Mm-hmm.
to live a healthy life inside and out. It does not mean mental health like you're a lunatic,
Right.
and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody that has, deeper mental struggles, but you know, it's just part of it. Just like the physical health is
Right.
absolutely involved in that mind
Mhm.
body thing. It's all interconnected, but you have to take care of all of it. And I will add one more thing to self-care is taking care of your body, because I don't care. I was diagnosed with this, that, and the other thing. It does not matter. I move every day, whether it's walking for an hour on the treadmill, going for a walk outside, doing some kind of yoga, whatever. I'm taking care of my body to make sure that, you know, this is the only one I have, at least in this life. I don't know if we get multiple lives or not, but I got to work with what I've got here and now.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to take care of it. And there's a wonderful, you know, like the other night, simple stuff again, took a shower and got nice lotion on. And then I thought, oh, let's get that coconut foot cream out and lathered that on. And I rubbed my shoulder. I felt so good and so moisturized by the time I got in bed with the stuff under my eyes. And it's, yeah, we're laughing. It sounds silly, but
I know what you're
self-care, you know, can we all afford? I'd rather go to Arizona on a spa retreat for 4 days, but you know, lathering every moisturizer I have for every part of my body one night just worked just fine. I literally, I felt like a darn princess going to bed that night.
Probably
Felt
slept
good.
great.
I did actually sleep really, really good. But, you know, self-care, I think we do have to take care of. It's not just making sure we're being positive and that we're learning
Mhm.
self-regulation tools. We do have to take care of, you know, our heart, you know, as far as keeping it happy and doing things that make it happy. And we have to take care of our body, whether it's indulging in all these moisturizers one night or, you know, exercising every day, keep moving. All that stuff creates, you know, the endorphins in your brain, which
Mhm.
make you feel good. And, you know, so it all works together, but you got to keep it all working together. You have to take that
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah, I know for me, my number one stress reliever is some form of exercise. It could be walking,
Yes.
it could be getting on my bike. I used to do cardio kickboxing. That was a great one.
Yes. I
Wow, that
love
was a good
that
one.
one.
I missed
It gets
that.
the anger out.
Oh yeah, it does. Oh yeah, it does. I miss that so bad. But you know, movement, you
Yes.
know, and getting out, like we take our dogs for a walk in the morning. And I've even gotten in the habit, and they say this, it's really interesting. I read about this, that I don't even wear my sunglasses when I go in the morning, that I allow the morning
Yes.
sun. Your
Yep.
body needs that. And I'm telling you, it actually made a difference, because I used to always put my
Yep.
sunglasses on because my eyes are sensitive to the sun. Um, and I read about that and I thought, okay, well, at least in the morning, you know, I'll just try it without glasses. And it did actually make a difference. I had a lot more
Yeah.
energy when I was done. It's interesting.
Yeah, I do actually take a 5,000 IU vitamin D supplement every day, but it is really important to get the sun. And I had read the same thing. And so I
Mhm.
don't, you know, if we go on vacations and we're walking down beaches or whatever, I make sure not, I'm one of those people that's squinting and
Yeah.
probably get like the lines of
Yeah.
tanning or burning in my forehead, but it does actually make you feel better. And the thing is, we're all different, and whatever speaks to your soul, just
Mhm.
do it, you know. And you know, speaking of beaches, that's one of my personal things for, so I don't know, ever since I was a kid, and I did spend a lot of time on beaches as a kid, but you know, the sound of the water, and
Yeah.
even just in the early morning before a beach is populated and there's
The
just those one or
smell.
two random motivated people that are jogging. Yeah, the smell, but the peace, the quiet,
Mhm.
the expanse of the horizon and the water. It just it really grounds me
Yeah. I
and,
was just gonna
and
say.
makes me realize how tiny and minuscule, you know, we are in the
Mhm.
scheme of the universe. That here we are, all these people in all our big cities and all our stupid crap that we think is so important. I'm sorry that wasn't said so eloquently,
No,
but
really,
I
actually
mean,
it was.
really,
It's
but
true.
really, I mean, it really makes you think about, like, without all that stuff, you know, I used to always say this to my son, and I've said this to many people. Life isn't complicated, people make it complicated.
Mhm.
You know, and when you're on a beach and nothing and nobody, and you're just really feeling that smallness, and but it's a good thing. it makes you realize what's really important and what's not. On the other hand, at least for me, it also motivates me because I'm like, okay, I might be this one tiny minuscule thing in the universe, but everything that we say and do, no matter who you are, I don't care if you're the lady scrubbing the floors at the hotels or if you're the bigwig who owns all of the resort properties all over the world. Everything we say and do has impact on other humans. And there is a domino effect to that. Spreads like
Yes.
wildfire. And so be careful with the way you talk to the people around you and to yourself, most
Yes.
importantly. And be careful how you act and treat other people and yourself, most importantly. Because that will have an effect. You don't know that, there's a perfect story for this, and I don't even remember where I heard it, but I heard it years ago. It was probably a chicken soup for the soul thing. But somebody said that they were leaving church and saw a young woman in passing and said to her, it just gave her a compliment and said, "You're really pretty," or something, or "You have really pretty eyes," some compliment. That young woman apparently had gone to that mass. She wasn't even religious, but she was planning on killing herself. She was leaving that mass to go home and take her life. But because that one person, she had just gone to church because she felt like she needed to say a prayer or make something right with God before she took her life. But she ended up not taking her life and went on to tell this story that woman who stopped and just took those 2 seconds to notice her, to see her for that 1 second, stopped her from taking her life. I don't know what better example of impact. It doesn't cost anything, doesn't take any time. It's not an inconvenience. It's not a bother or burden. And the best thing, we're all capable of it. Everybody.
Even just looking at someone and smiling.
Yes.
Looking them in the eye and smiling at them can make such a difference for someone. I've had people actually say something to me about that and how they appreciated it.
That's exactly right. And I know in one of my lower moments in my former marriage, I did go to church. I tried to every Sunday because he would usually try to fight me and stop me, but I usually made it there. And I'll never forget one time, if you're Catholic, you know that communion takes forever. And so as everybody is going through, I am in my pew and I have got my head down and my shoulders are caved in and I am sobbing, and I have long hair, so it was kind of hiding my face, but I just didn't want to go home. And, communion's like the end of church. So, you're leaving in 5 or 10 minutes. And I was feeling so awful. And a woman that was coming into the pew behind me, an older woman, she just put her hand on my shoulder as she passed. And here I am talking about it on a podcast. Why? Because it made an impact. Because in that one moment, I thought somebody sees my pain, somebody gets it, somebody's noticing that I'm hurting and they're trying to comfort and soothe me. That was her way of telling me it's going to be okay. I'm with you. And again, didn't cost anything, didn't take any time, and everybody's capable of it. So we have to be more self-aware. And I will say this as somebody who, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just Dana. But knowing that I can have an impact on people and receiving messages from people, as I'm sure you do too, people that say, because I heard you say this, or because I read this thing you wrote, I had the strength to leave this abusive relationship, or I am, planning, or I am whatever it is. That's the wildfire effect. That's the domino effect. How cool is that? How cool is that we can, even though I am still going to be healing forever and ever, and some people say I'm crazy and I'm broken and I'm damaged and I'm all these things, I can still help other people make good with their lives and turn their lives around. There's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that.
Agreed. Agreed. There is nothing sweeter than seeing someone begin their healing or go deeper into their healing. There is nothing more precious.
No, it's like we're all winning. And
Mhm.
I love that we can help each other, because in this world we are often pitted against each other
Yeah.
and competing for whether it's
Mhm.
positions at work or, relationships, in every aspect of life, you know, there's like not enough room at the top for everybody. Only one
Mhm.
person can win the race. Only it's okay if we all win, because how much better is that if we're all in a good place? Why do we have to get well, I don't say we. There are people that have to keep other people down to feel better about themselves,
Right.
but there is a much better feeling about yourself when you're able to help each other. Like I
Mhm.
always say, like, for me to get out of that relationship, it took me 15 years to finally get out of my marriage. I always say it felt like I was in a mud pit trying to like claw my way up,
Mhm.
but I couldn't through the mud. So now that I'm up here and I'm out of that mud pit, I'm like reaching down, just, come on, grab my hand.
Grab
I
another
know
one.
it's slippery and we're trying to hold on to each other, but I got you, come up here. It's much
Mhm.
better up here than down there,
Mhm.
and you can clean all that yuck off of you and you can move on. You're going to have scratches and bruises and be dented up a little bit, but it all gets better. It all heals.
Mhm. So you're doing the same thing that I want to do, and that's shorten people's pain, help people shorten their pain.
Exactly. Exactly. And that was the funny thing, that when I went on this venture of publishing my book, everybody in my life, my real life, so to speak, was all about the book and focused on publishing the book. And I'm like, but it's not about the book. I kept saying, it's not about the book. Oh, but money and this and that.
Right.
No, it's not about, believe me, I'm not going to make any money, but it's not about any of that. I'm like, I said from day one, if I knew that all of that stuff I went through saved one person from getting
Yes.
sick like me, or gave one person the strength, I just want to help one other person. I don't care if I sell one book. If something I said helps them,
Mhm.
then that's all I want, because then it means that I went through all that for something very meaningful.
Mhm.
That is my impact on, because don't we all want to have some impact and legacy on this world, especially as minuscule and small as we are in the scheme of the universe. So, if you don't live by a beach, go outside. The other thing I like to do is go out at night, look up at the
Yeah.
dark sky, look up at the stars.
Yes.
It's amazing. It
Mhm.
again grounds you. But I just want everybody to know, not just that they can heal and get better and that there's a better life, but just really focusing on empowering other people. But you have the power in you to make things
Mhm.
better for yourself and then others.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. If anybody wanted to reach out to you, how would they reach out to you?
Website, danasdiaz.com. Link for the book is there. Links to Facebook and Instagram are there. Links to my email are there. This podcast and others I've been on
Mhm.
are on my press room page. So just reach out, follow me, so that I think you can subscribe to my email on the website so that you'll get a notice when the next 2 books come out, which they should be out by next spring or summer. One will talk
Wow.
about the childhood stuff, and the other one talks about, kind of what happens after those abusive situations and how you
Mhm.
can move on to love again, and the ramifications, that grief and all that other stuff we talked about,
Mhm.
but where you can find healing in that. So there's a little something for everybody there. But I appreciate everybody's support, even if it's just getting on social media and liking something I post. I post content every day about abuse, domestic violence, healing. You'll even find funny stuff, because sometimes we just have to laugh.
We have to laugh. It's
We
such a
do.
serious subject. Yeah. Sometimes we have to kind of lighten it up a little bit. It's so
Yes.
heavy. But
Yes.
well, thank you. This has been great. And it's a subject I'm sure we could have many podcasts on.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg on this one.
Yes.
But I will say that unless you've been in a narcissistic relationship, you have no idea. There's no other relationship like it.
No, there really isn't.
There is no other relationship like it. And it really changes who you are for a minute, but there is healing from it. That's the encouraging thing. It does take a lot out of you, but there is absolutely healing, and there's absolutely love in the future. Because both you and I, the relationship, the marriage that I'm in now is very different than my other marriages. Very different.
So is mine. Yeah.
Very different.
It takes some getting used to too.
It does. It's
a wonderful thing. It's a good transition.
It is. And he's taught me a lot, because my husband's like yours, where he's, easygoing and optimistic, and, they don't have our past. And so I'm constantly watching him all the time. And we talk about where iron sharpens iron, because he learns from me. I learn from him. I mean, we're constantly doing that, but he's my first safe place.
Yes. That you are everything you said. Yes, 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 yes.
So
it's a
out
beautiful
there.
thing. It is out there. It really is. And hopefully everybody can find that. But in the meantime, just everybody take care of yourselves.
Right. Because we didn't get into these relationships being unhealthy and still having the mindset and the way we did things. We did a lot of work and a lot of healing in order to have these, because believe me, these men wouldn't be with us if we were our old hot mess.
No, they wouldn't.
They would be out of there. So, well, thank you again. This has been great. I will put all your links or your website on here so everybody can get to it. And I put it on my website as well, so they'll be able to reach out to you at any time.
Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure.
It was fun. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.